beauties, how y'all doing? I hope y'all are okay. I hope everyone's safe and well, especially during these crazy times. I'm praying that quarantine comes to an end, but I'm also praying that there's a cure for this coronavirus because I am going crazy in my house. I need human interaction. I need to leave. I need to go on walks. I need to be on a crowded subway. I need to experience life again because I feel like I'm just a prisoner in my own home. But nonetheless, today I will be talking about my move from Houston, Texas to New York City. Now, as you all may know or may not know if you didn't watch my first video, I moved from Houston to New York for pharmacy school. So in this video, I will be sharing my little personal journey, but also huge tips that I wish I knew before I moved to New York City. So I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys like, subscribe, and maybe even comment. Tell me where y'all live in. What's it like over there? How are you dealing with quarantine? I would love to get to know everyone. So yeah, without further ado, drum roll please. Let's get into the video. Before I get into this video, I just want everybody to know that you do not have to sound like this to be from the South, let alone be from Texas, because I don't have an accent like that. And yeah, it's really awkward when someone's like, what? You're from Texas, but you don't sound like Sandy from SpongeBob SquarePants. Well, let me tell you something, honey. Not all Texans sound like Sandy from SpongeBob SquarePants, okay? Okay. Now let's get into this video. I just want to preface this by saying that all of the headaches that I had could have been avoided if I decided to dorm on campus, but knowing myself, I would not be able to coexist with people in a small vicinity as me. I know myself, I can't do it. I'll get into arguments and confrontations because I like things done a certain way and I know that not everybody else does. So I knew once I got accepted into my school and I realized that like my New York dream is coming true, that I would need to find a place ASAP alone. Yes, alone. Now, moving to New York City is very, very difficult, especially if you're not from the tri-state area, I want to say. If you can't drive down to look at the apartments, it's going to be completely difficult for you, especially if you're trying to do it without a realtor. Now, that was my first mistake. I tried to find places without having to pay or look for a realtor because during the time that I moved here, you had to pay a realtor fee, which in my case was the equivalent to my first month's pay of rent, which was crazy. But it's really impossible to find a place in New York City without a realtor. Now, it hurts to pay that much, but a lot of building owners or homeowners will not rent out a place to you unless they have like a realtor or a third party negotiating between y'all because I guess it's more professional. I really don't see why it's necessary, but to each their own. So I had to find a realtor, which is pretty easy. I mean, there's so many realtors in New York City, it's kind of ridiculous if you can't find one. So I found my realtor and we were in contact when I was back home in Houston, and my dad actually was helping me with this. So my dad was in contact with him trying to help, trying to figure out places that I could stay. I knew that I didn't want to live in Manhattan just because the prices for an apartment are insane. So it wouldn't be economical, but it also would be a little bit further away from my school. Being that I'm from Houston, Texas, I'm very used to suburban living. So I wanted to find a neighborhood in New York that kind of emulates that. So I was really looking in Brooklyn because it's a little bit more spaced out. It's not as crowded. It's not as heavily populated. So the nightlife and all of that craziness really wouldn't bother me if I'm studying for an exam or whatever it may be. So I had my realtor help me look for places in Brooklyn as I was still in Houston. So once he gathered a few places, I saw the pictures online and I was like, okay, these are potentials. My mom and I flew out to New York City the summer before I started school. And we looked at all the places. We were in such a time crunch. We only came for a week, I want to say, and we thought that everything would be done in a week. Little did we know, when you're trying to rent out a place, sometimes the process can be super easy and super quick if the homeowners or the building owners are like nice and willing to help let you move in as soon as possible. In other cases, some people have a move-in date and some people do not say that they have a moving date until they meet you in person. So that's what happened to me with 2 of the 4 places that I went to. they said that earliest date that I can move into was late in August. Now this was June, inching into July. So that meant I had to go back home. I had to stay there for another month and a half and then move back. It was just a whole headache for me, especially because I already had everything packed. All my clothes, all my makeup. I was moving from my parents' house, so I really didn't have furniture to move with me, which made it a lot easier for me. But I was already packed with 3 huge luggages and 2 carry-on items. It would have been a headache for me to go back home to Texas and then fly back a month and a half later. So even though I loved the apartments, I was like, no, thank you. Then we went to the third place and I thought it was absolutely atrocious. It was disgusting. It was in the basement of a house. It smelled, it was weird. The carpet was green. I was like, ooh, no, sissy, this is not for me. So I told the realtor and I was like, listen, what's going on? We're not gonna find me a place? Like this, we're on a time crunch. I'm trying to find a place. So the last and final place is the place that I moved into, which is my home. It was absolutely beautiful. It's in a neighborhood. So the actual building, which is a house, is split into 3. It's a 2-story house, which is split into 3. Each person renting has their own entrance and you don't really see your neighbors. You don't really interact with them, which is beautiful. I thought that the place was absolutely beautiful. I was so in love with it. It has huge windows. It's in a relatively quiet area. There's a strip that has like 4 supermarkets, a lot of delis, Dunkin' Donuts, Walgreens. There's so many things on the strip that were easily accessible to me. So that was one of the biggest selling points. I fell in love instantly. Homeowners love me. I love the homeowners. So it was just a done deal. I moved in the same day. We got furniture for the place and then my mom left me all on my own. I will say, now, these are my tips and tricks that I wish people told me when I was moving. When you're moving, you need a realtor, no matter what. Like, sorry, sis, you're gonna have to find a realtor. Unless you know someone personally here that would be able to go out and like look at places for you, this, that, and the other. My second tip would be, when you're looking for an apartment, you have to factor in the area that you're moving into. So although the apartment would look beautiful from pictures, you do not know if the environment is safe, if the community is safe, if you're close to grocery stores or at least a drugstore. So you should know the community that you're moving into. My third tip would be really look into transportation. So I didn't move to New York City with my car. I left my car back home in Texas because the parking situation is absolutely ridiculous here and I think I would lose my mind driving in New York City. If you're not bringing your car to New York City with you, then you really need to look into, are you close to a bus or are you close to a train? Those 2 are main sources of transportation, so you're gonna have to make sure that you're close to either or, preferably a train because buses have way more stops that are so unnecessary. But if you live close to both, you can travel locally on a bus and then you can travel from like borough to borough on a train. And then my final tip would be to make sure that you're ready to move. It's really easy to feel alone. So if you do not think you'll be comfortable moving in alone, there's so many websites and there's so many realtors out there that will actually look for a roommate for you or look for a place that is already renting out to someone that's looking for a roommate. Now, as you get into like boroughs and stuff, pricing may range tremendously. Like if I were to be renting in the city, a 1-bedroom apartment, which is what I have now, I would be paying upwards of $2,000, which is very uneconomical for me as a person. Being that I'm still in school and stuff, it just didn't make sense for me to have to spend that much money on an apartment that's probably gonna be a studio. I just feel like you need to really plan it out before you move into a city or a state that you don't really know anything about. Always do your research because it ends up paying off. It makes the actual move a lot easier for you. So, being a Southerner, moving into the North, I was really culture shocked. It took me a long time to accommodate to this type of culture in a sense, like a fast-paced life. That's what New Yorkers say. I don't agree with that. I think that everyone everywhere lives a fast-paced life. If you're in a city, I moved from Houston, Texas, which is a pretty big city, to New York City, which is another big city, but I just felt like a rude awakening when I moved to New York City. I didn't understand why everyone wanted to stand so close to each other, and I didn't understand why everyone wanted to gawk and stare at you like you're some alien. I was culture shocked. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I didn't know why everyone was acting the way that they were acting. It was so confusing to me. A lot of people say that it's because it's a huge melting pot. I do not believe that, because similarly enough to Houston, Texas, we have a huge cultural pot. We have so many people from different ethnicities, races, diversities, everything that you can imagine. So moving to New York, I wasn't culture shocked by different people and different cultures and ethnicities. I was shocked by the lack of respect. Men will shoulder bump you to get into a seat, and people will race you to get to a seat. I thought that this was completely ridiculous, because in the South, if somebody wants to pass by you, they'll say, "Excuse me, ma'am, can I?" In New York City, there's no "excuse me, ma'am." I was so confused. People would literally shoulder bump me, take my shoulder with them. I'm left shoulderless, and not say sorry or not say "excuse me." It blew my mind. I was like, okay, obviously this culture allows for this, so let me not get too worked up. Let me not get too upset. Little did I know that it would get worse and worse and worse. I will never let New York strip me of my natural southernness, but I'm this close. This close. It's so bad. It took me a really long time to adjust to it, and you just need to factor in that you need to avoid all of that. So when a train arrives or a subway arrives, I will let everybody get on first, and then I'll go on. I think that there are like cultural cues that people need to understand when they move to New York City, because like I said, I was very upset when I first moved here for a couple of months. I was like, how do these people act like that with each other? Like, it's so sad. It just doesn't make sense to me. But as you progressively live here longer and you start to understand the culture, you start to realize that these people just don't care. So you need to act accordingly and don't care either. That being said, I experienced my first act of racism in New York City, the most cultural city in the world. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that people that look different will always have each other's back. I was very wrong in that case, because I was discriminated against by what I perceive to be a Hispanic man with a very thick Hispanic accent from where I do not know, I can't pinpoint, but he was telling me that he's gonna call Donald Trump on me, he's gonna get me deported, and I'm sitting there like, I'm from Houston, Texas, a Republican red state, and I've never in my life experienced racism. I've never heard words like terrorist, I've never heard words like deported until I moved to New York City, and I'm like, I was so genuinely confused, because there was no interaction between me and this guy. He just came up to me and was like, "I'm gonna call Donald Trump on you, you terrorist, I'm gonna deport you." I was like, are you talking to me? I was so confused, I was so hurt. I lost my mind, and honestly, I acted out of character. I was genuinely upset. I did not understand why he felt the need to say the things that he said to me, but what I will say, learning experience, it's never worth it. Honestly, it should go in one ear and not the other. But to end this video on a very positive note, New York City is such a beautiful place. Honestly, going from the architecture to the museums to just activities that you can do, the parks, New York City is truly a beauty, and I always will urge anyone to come and visit, because like I said, it's so beautiful. So yeah, I hope you found this video very informative. To those of you that want to move to New York City, definitely take my key points, because they will help you 100,000%. I wish someone told me that when I was moving here, but unfortunately I didn't know anyone that moved to New York City. So yeah, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.